The Timberwolves sitting in the 7th seed out west got some good news yesterday. Jimmy Butler has been cleared for contact. He missed the last 15 games with a knee injury. He was big hurt. T-Wolves are looking to make the playoffs for the first time since 2004. Nick, how much different are the Timberwolves with Jimmy Butler on the floor?
With Jimmy Butler on the floor, when all things are clicking, they are right near the top of that second tier of teams in the NBA, because you've got a big man that presents a matchup problem for every team in the league, and then you have a wing player that is one of just a handful of guys that are elite at both ends at his position. That's when, if Andrew Wiggins is playing well that night, if they're getting good point guard play from Jeff Teague, that you say, oh, this Timberwolves team could be dangerous. Without Jimmy Butler, they're just a regular team. Yeah. One really good player and some supporting players. Yeah, He's so critical.
I can't remember what NBA star was the last time I saw him on the bench and he was injured and he was wearing his uniform. That lets you know about Jimmy Butler, how much he wants to play. And he is the vocal leader. He is the superstar on this team that commands the type of attention. Karl Anthony Towns, he's a good player, but he doesn't have that gravity of pull on the other players. We talk about the other kid,
Andrew Wiggins.
Andrew Wiggins, like, he's not a leader. You know, he's upset that he's the third option.
Right.
Well, Jimmy Butler's been hurt. What have you been doing with that opportunity? So Jimmy Butler is a critical piece to Thibodeau getting it done there in Minnesota.
All right, Thunder took down the Pelicans last night, 109-104. Russell Westbrook recorded his 24th triple-double of the season, finished with 26 points, 15 rebounds, 13 assists. Nick, were you impressed with what Westbrook and the Thunder did last night?
Listen, it's hard to say Russ didn't play well because he obviously had this monster triple-double, shot over 50%, which is, given how he played the last few games, was a nice return to form, I will say. And most notably, I will say, only took one three-pointer in the game. That had been something that we had talked about last week that Russ maybe needs to tear down on. What is not great for Oklahoma City is this. It continues a trend of, are you playing a good team? Can you win? Only if Russ has a monster game. This is their 9th win against a quality opponent since Christmas. All 9 of those games, Russ has been a monster. Averaged something like 39-11 in those wins. You can't ask him to have this type of night every night in the playoffs when every night in the playoffs you're playing a good team.
Well, a lot of people would think, well, Chris and Nick, you guys said that with LeBron. If he has a monster game, then they're going to be okay. The difference in LeBron is, in his monster games, the other games he plays in, even though they're not monsters, they're not horrific games. He don't make the other. He still makes his teammates better, and that's the problem with Russ. When he gets off his game, when he falls in love with the three-point line, the carryover to making his teammates better as a distributor, it is not there, and the team suffers. So it's nice to see that they're back on track. How long that stays, I don't think it's going to be.
And in a game that was critical for both teams, I mean, the Pelicans could miss the playoffs. Game that was critical for both teams. The Thunder won despite Melo and Paul George going 15 of 40 from the field.
If the Pelicans don't make the playoffs, then the Browns should shave that monster caterpillar above his nose.
Gosh. All right, moving on to the NFL. Baker Mayfield is projected to be one of the top picks in the draft later this month, and he's already getting compared to an all-time great. Baker's been linked to Brett Favre, and Favre agrees with the comparison. CC, is this a fair comparison between Baker and Favre?
There is no comparison that's fair when you're talking about someone who hasn't played one snap in the NFL to one of the all-time greats. Brett Favre, when you look at him and compare him, who does Brett Favre compare to as far as legends before him?
Nobody.
Zero. I mean, Brett Favre is John Wayne. I mean, he's the guy that, oh, man, he's been injured all week. Oh, he's not going to play. He's questionable. And then he limps out there on the field. He's done it to the Vikings a couple times. And I'm a huge fan of Brett Favre. It's hard to duplicate that success. But when you talk about a kid who has a personality, has that kind of swagger, will throw the ball in the traffic, is a vocal leader. Remember the battles between Warren Sapp and Brett Favre. I could see Baker Mayfield getting into some of those things, so I think some of the comparisons, but we need to pump our brakes a little bit because how bad Brett Favre was. I'm talking about bad meaning good.
Exactly right.
Thanks,
I think
he was actually a good player.
I think Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Brett Favre was. But I think we are more likely to see another Aaron Rodgers way before we see another Brett Favre. Brett Favre, to me, we use the unicorn word in the NBA all the time. He's a football unicorn. What he was able to do, consistently showing up, and the storybook.
That was before they started protecting quarterbacks, too.
Before they started protecting quarterbacks, the tragedy where his father passes away. That week, somehow, the game's on national TV. Somehow, he went, the way he played that week, like, there were so many amazing moments that we will just never see again.
But he did have some questionable things off the field that Favre was able to get under control.
Absolutely.
So when you look at Baker, potentially right there, you might have a match.
There are some similarities. I just don't think we'll ever see a player like that again.
Yes.
Another quarterback looking to get his name called at the draft, Lamar Jackson. The 2016 Heisman Trophy winner is hoping to make the transition to the pros. Jackson's draft stock is reportedly trending upwards, and he's being projected as high as 15th overall to the Cardinals. CC, is Lamar Jackson worth the first-round pick?
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah?
If you look at what he's done in college, and based on some of the other first-round picks that we've seen, his work should get him in the first round. And then if you look at, well, how did he do it? What conference did he do it in? What were the opposition? Last year's first-round pick, Chicago, Mr. Trubisky, he played in ACC, right? Was he ever ACC Player of the Year?
No.
Was he ever up for the Heisman Trophy?
No.
He seemed to be doing pretty good in Chicago.
Well, they're happy with him. They traded up to go get him.
Right. If you start comparing apples to apples, then yes, he should be considered. When you start looking at people in the different skill sets between Josh Allen and the
Sam
kid
Darnold, Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield.
and then the kid at Oklahoma State.
Oh, Mason Rudolph.
Those are the top 5 guys. Yep. Yeah, Lamar Jackson, he should be included. All these guys, for the most part, have a first-round grade. Now, depending on what you like and everything, I believe Lamar Jackson, he should be in their rank 3rd or 4th among those quarterbacks, which would warrant him being drafted in the first round.
All right, I want to ask you a question about Lamar Jackson because I want to be honest with the audience. I think my opinion on Lamar Jackson is slightly biased because I think he has been so unfairly covered by some of the people who do this job that I might skew too far in the other direction at times, like almost because I get aggravated by how I feel Lamar Jackson is discussed. You believe he could be or should be worth a first-round pick, but you also see some, I don't want to say flaws, but some holes in his game, some places that he absolutely needs to improve. By the way, you see that different types of areas with every quarterback. That's why there isn't a consensus, obvious #1 pick. You've talked a lot about him going to the right team. Let's set that aside. If you were his quarterback coach, if you were a coach with him, and you would say the one thing you need to improve on the most right now is what?
Accuracy. Be able to throw the ball accurate, because if he's able to do that in a West Coast offense, if he's able to have that accuracy and anticipation, then he's going to be able to play, because we know what he can do when the play breaks down. His natural instincts will take over, and he's one of the best that we've ever seen. But I need to be able to train him as a pocket passer, and the only way you become comfortable passing in the pocket is when you get completions and you're accurate throwing the football.
But of all the intangibles, isn't accuracy the hardest one to say? You need to get better at accuracy.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why we have him in the first round. That's the reason why we're getting ready to pay him a lot of money, is because of that accuracy. And the difference between the great ones and the good ones, the difference between college and the pro, is the ability to be able to throw in anticipation and also throw into smaller windows.
I think another reason to be bullish on Lamar Jackson is you have seen what smart coaches are willing to do with dynamic playmakers at this position. Just look at the offense the Houston Texans ran the last 3 years, and then look at the offense they ran the half-dozen games Deshaun Watson was out there. They have no resemblance to each other. Bill O'Brien, on the fly, adjusted and said, we are going to make an offense that best suits your specific skill set. Now, we're not going to go RG3 first year in Washington, full-on collegiate offense.
Yes.
We're still going to run a pro offense, but we are not going to do, conversely, what I felt like happened to Vince Young, which was trying to remove all the things he was great at. Like, we're gonna try to go square peg, round hole here. Well, I saw that happen to Mike Vick early in his time, where he had some success running around. They're like, hey, we're going to make you purely a pocket passer. You've got to have a combination of the two. I think coaching staffs are more open-minded to that now than they had been in the past.
Great comparison with Lamar Jackson and Michael Vick. At this stage of their career, Lamar Jackson is such a better thrower of the football than Michael Vick was.
Okay.
So he's more apt to start off trying to be a pocket passer compared to the way Mike Vick just had to make plays in those first several years for the Falcons.
All right, let's go back to some basketball. San Antonio Spurs, only 5 games left in the season. Still no target date for Kawhi Leonard to return to the floor. Leonard was reportedly in New York over the weekend, getting opinion on his quad that has kept him out of all but 9 games this year. Greg Popovich said when Kawhi and his group feel he's ready, he'll be ready. Notice I said group. Mentioned it a couple times. CC, is it starting to look like we've seen the last of Kawhi with the Spurs?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last time we've seen Kawhi in a Spurs uniform, because I believe that Kawhi believes that he's hurt. So I don't believe he's going to play at all this year. Like, this year is gone. So we're already talking about next year, and I believe that there will be discussions about Kawhi Leonard moving on to other options, wanting to play in other cities. I believe he is interested. I believe he will entertain it this offseason. Like, when the team is trying to make a push to get into the playoffs and you find yourself in another city in New York looking at other options for an opinion from a doctor, you know, and the things that they're saying. Even Popovich mentioning Kawhi and his group, that right there is just a little...
He didn't have to say group.
No, but he knows.
Yeah.
He's not in control of the situation. He knows Kawhi's not in control of the situation. He realized that Kawhi has a number of people that have his ear. And those people have expressed concerns over Kawhi and his ability to get healthy. Is he healthy? And potentially discussing what do you want to do into the future from a business standpoint. Where do you want to play basketball? And what type of shoes would you like to wear?
This has deteriorated so much in the last 10 days that I have completely changed my opinion on this. 2 weeks ago, I said, I thought about it. The Spurs are not going to trade one of the 8 best players in the world, not a guy that they know they can offer exponentially more money than anybody else can. They will have the hammer in that regard. We know he's a guy who hasn't made a ton of money off the court, endorsement-wise. One of the things he's been unhappy with is the fact that he's only making, amazingly, $500,000 a year from Jordan Brand when he sees a guy like James Harden, who I'm sure he thinks he's better than, making literally 40 times that per year from Adidas. Like,
excuse me, how much is that?
So Harden's making $20 million a year from Adidas. He's making
$20 million. Yeah,
because I got my friends out there watching. They
okay, yeah, a lot more. They're grabbing their phone, doing the calculator. But it has deteriorated such to where you have Tony Parker, to me, coming at Kawhi's throat.
Yes.
You have Steven Jackson, who knows the Spurs, saying Tony Parker does not say that. Manu Ginobili does not say that without Greg Popovich giving them the green light or even encouraging them to say that. You now have Popovich saying, man, I pay close attention to what these guys say. And when he says Kawhi and his group and keeps talking about his group, that group, he's not talking about his mom and dad. He's talking about his circle, his advisors, who I'm sure deep down Popovich feels like have caused some of this rift. There is so much to do with what we saw going before the year about, is Kawhi unhappy there? Does Kawhi want to go somewhere else? Like, all of that, I think that has led to this. And I think that has built up to this. And then you also have, CC, the idea that I think some people have, that the Spurs are putting their own team records ahead of the health of the player, right? Their own team records, something you brought up before the show.
Right. That's one of the latest things is San Antonio has an unbelievable streak of winning 50 games.
They've won 50 games every year since the season was 50 games because of the strike.
And even more importantly, a streak as far as making the playoffs.
20 years in a row.
And there are people amongst Kawhi's group that question, what's more important to you, Pop? Is it the winning 50 games? Is it the playoff streak? Because they're in jeopardy of missing the playoffs. Now, they've turned it on a little bit here of late. Yesterday's win was a huge win. And is that more important than Kawhi's overall health? Now, people would be like, oh, Popovich would never do anything like that. But Kawhi's group, they think that potentially that is on the table, is jeopardizing his long-term health compared to what's in best interest of the team and continuing their streak.
And sometimes the truth is less important than what's believed. I don't know if Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks threw the ball instead of handing it to Marshawn Lynch because they wanted Russell Wilson to win MVP and they didn't want Lynch to face the team. I don't know if that happened. I do know enough players in the locker room believe that that was the case, that it damaged that locker room. And by the way, that team doesn't exist anymore the way it did. I don't know if it's true how much Popovich values the streak, how much he's weighing streak versus health. What I do feel like we know is people close to Kawhi believe that. And if they believe that, it's as good as it's better than the truth. And then you talk about this year, the upcoming draft, right? I sent you a clip this weekend of Luka Doncic, this 19-year-old phenom killing it in EuroLeague. We've talked about DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley, Michael Porter Jr. You talk about if Kawhi Leonard's available, what are teams offering? There's only 5 players you wouldn't trade straight up for Kawhi Leonard in the whole league. Like if you, I know the Celtics aren't going to trade Kyrie because they want to build something around him, but like that's something. Kawhi for Kyrie.
Danny
Ainge. With the Phoenix Suns. Like, hey, Phoenix, what about 2 of your young players and what's going to be the top 4 pick?
Right.
What about Los Angeles?
Kawhi can't veto that trade, but he can agree not to sign an extension with those teams. But I look for there would be a great deal of interest. I wouldn't be surprised if Kawhi did not play in San Antonio. We've seen him the last game there. And I wouldn't be surprised if Boston, New York, and watch out for the Los Angeles Lakers be involved in bidding to try to obtain the services of Kawhi.
For the first time, this is what we're saying, because all season long, I think we all thought that there was a window there for him to come back, sign this max deal with the Spurs, and
$200 million and to be dangerous in the playoffs. I think. Man, I don't think he's playing again this year.
Yeah, well, we as the group, we couldn't. I mean, Kawhi and his group, they couldn't speak out until the end of the season.
Spurs need to win the next 5 games to get to 500. They got to go to get to 50 wins. They got to go 5-0. Coming up, is there trouble brewing with the New England Patriots? It's next on First Things First.
Jenna Wolf is making 5 times as much as Nick.
No,
right?
Jenna Wolf is not. I'll tell you that much. Maybe 5 times less.